we're absolutely delighted to welcome Dee Hennessy on with us. Dee is a very skilled wellness coach and mindfulness teacher who has already been engaged with MS Ireland and done great work for us, or with us, should I say. So we're delighted to have her on this morning, and we feel that it will be a great benefit to everybody watching. So Dee will take the same format as before, where we will have your presentation, and any questions that come in then we can ask at the end. So with that, I'll let you get started. Thanks, Dee.
Thanks so much, Aoife, and I am so happy to be here this morning. So to begin with, I just want to say a couple of things. One is, I am not an expert like your last speaker, so you know an awful lot more as we go through this presentation of what's helpful and what's not. And also, I don't have the experience of having MS, so you are much more expert in what's helpful and what's not. But I'm delighted to share my thoughts. So just before we begin, just to be clear that this is not really a mindfulness training. What I'm doing is I'm opening the window on mindfulness and inviting you to have a glimpse. So I know in the last presentation, there was so much really useful information. So for this period of time, I'm inviting you to just allow yourself to be here however you are. The intention is to have a look at mindfulness and see, might there be something helpful or useful here for you in terms of managing stress? But I want you to feel totally free to participate or not in the little practices I'm going to do. You're most welcome to just sit, press your own pause button, and just allow my words to float on by. So no need to take any special attention to be staying focused, really listening to your own inner wisdom for this time. And then to encourage you to send feedback through the chat and the questions and answers. Really useful to know what's helpful, what's not, any comments or reflections. And then we'll have a little bit of time at the end to have a look at that. So having said all that, I would like to invite you to do a first practice with me. So already being together for quite some time this morning, having some input and taking the coffee break, I now invite you to just settle back into wherever you're sitting, and we just do a short breathing compassionate practice together. So just using our breath to connect with ourselves compassionately and effectively. So settling first. Taking a minute to find your sweet spot in the chair. Maybe seeing that the 2 feet are on the floor, flat on the floor. And then just noticing the points of contact between the feet and the floor and the body and the chair. And deciding now what to do with the eyes. Maybe you'd like to lower the gaze and allow your eyes to rest just a few feet in front of you on the floor. Perhaps you'd like to stay focused on me, or you might even like to close your eyes. But just taking that moment now to get settled into your sweet spot. And now taking a few slow, deep breaths. Just breathing in nice and long and slow. And breathing out nice and long and slow. And on each of these out breaths, just seeing if it might be possible to soften and maybe dissolve any tension or tightness that's here in the body right now. So breathing in nice and long and slow. And breathing out, letting go a little. If you like, you can become aware now of your heart area. And maybe even placing a hand right up just over your heart area. Just helping you to connect now with the heart. And also reminding yourself that not only are we becoming aware right now, but we're becoming compassionately aware of ourselves and our breath, just in this moment. So if you like, you can leave your hand here, or you might prefer now to allow the hand to return to the lap and let it rest. So now beginning to notice the breathing. No special efforting, just noticing the breathing now in your body. Feeling the body breathing in and feeling the body breathing out. Just allowing your body to breathe. There is nothing you need to do, just breathing in and breathing out. Notice how your body is nourished by the in-breath, and notice how your body is relaxed by the out-breath. So breathing in, nourishment, and breathing out, letting go, even a little, of any tightness or tension. Breathing out, feeling more relaxed, more at ease. Now noticing the rhythm of your breathing, flowing in and flowing out. Just taking some time here and now to really notice the natural rhythm of the breath coming into and out of the body. Maybe feeling your whole body subtly move as you breathe in, the belly rising on the in-breath, and your whole body move as you breathe out. Watching the breath, if you like we might watch the movement of the sea, watching the waves coming in and the waves going out. So we're just watching the breath. And it's likely that we will notice many times as we do this, the mind wandering. And just seeing if we can remember that there's nothing wrong at all with the mind becoming busy. It's what our minds do. So each time we notice the mind getting busy, seeing if it might be possible to, with kindness and curiosity, and without judgment, just noticing where the mind is taking us. And then gently unhooking from the thought and just coming back now just to this breath. Breathing in and breathing out. Allowing your whole body to be gently caressed and rocked by your own breath. Giving yourself over to your breathing. Letting your breath being all there is. Just breathing. Just enjoying your breath. Becoming breathing. Being breathing. Enjoying your breath. And now, gently letting go of the focus on the breathing. And just sitting quietly, just in your own experience, right here and right now. Seeing if it might be possible to allow yourself, whatever it is that you're feeling, just here and now. Allowing yourself to be just as you are, with a compassionate and an affectionate heart. Before ending this short practice, just bringing the attention now to the lower belly, to the abdomen, if you like, and seeing if it might be possible to notice the slight rise of the belly on the in-breath and the falling back on the out-breath. The belly inflating on the in-breath and the gentle deflation on the out-breath. Just noticing that safe space right down in the belly. The space of all strength and of kindness. The source of all your power. And just trusting in that. A safe space to guide you as you begin to move into the rest of your day now. Guiding you with compassion and kindness. So moving away from the safe space now and noticing again the feet on the floor, the body on the chair, and just seeing if it might be possible to notice any sounds around you right now. As we come back into this welcome but unusual space together. And so just feeling free to move a part of the body now. You might want to yawn or stretch or wiggle or squiggle some part of the body. And just feeling free now to put in the chat box or question and answer anything that you're experiencing or noticing in yourself right now. And knowing that there's no right or wrong way. Everything is acceptable. So just anything you'd like to share, that would be wonderful. And so that was one of a few practices that I'm going to do in this little space together. And I encourage you to dip in and dip out as suits you. I want to share now, just less than 2 minutes, of this guy, Dan Harris. Dan Harris was a news anchor with NBC in America, and he had a panic attack live on air. And so he found his way into mindfulness. And he's now the key guy behind that very popular mindfulness app called Happify. And so he's trying to explain here, I think he does a good job, on why mindfulness. So just less than a couple of minutes. Oh dear. Apologies.
I feel like meditation has been the victim of the worst marketing campaign for anything ever. All the traditional art around meditation shows people with those beatific looks on their faces floating off into the cosmos. I think this is a better way to think about it. For most people, meditation is hard, especially at the beginning. It does get easier, though. It's a bit like going to the gym. If you're not panting or sweating, you're probably cheating. So many people tell me they can't meditate because they can't clear their mind. Write this down and put it up on your wall. Clearing your mind is basically impossible unless you are enlightened, congratulations, or you have died. Very sorry. So why is meditation worth the trouble? For beginners, I think there are two big benefits. The first is focus. In our modern info blitzkrieg, we are more distracted than ever, and meditation can boost your mental muscle of focus. The second benefit we've talked about a little bit, but it bears repeating. Meditation can really help you be less yanked around by your thoughts, impulses, urges, and emotions. You learn how to respond wisely to things instead of reacting blindly. Respond, not react. It is a game-changing proposition. I'll be honest, I was super hesitant about meditation personally because I'm a skeptical TV news anchor with the attention span of a 3-month-old golden retriever. But then I had a panic attack on national television, which sucked uncontrollably. But long story short, it ultimately led me to meditation.
So that is why really we practice meditation or mindfulness in the Western world now. It's really brain training. It's not a religion, it's not a philosophy, it doesn't require huge amounts of time, but it is brain training. John Kabat-Zinn brought mindfulness to the West, and he did it specifically because he was working with people who were in deep physical or emotional pain. And so we know now, many years later, 30 plus years later, that there's a huge body of evidence that doing some kind of brain training in the area of mindfulness can be really helpful with things like chronic pain, chronic fatigue, and with things like coping with, major life changes and the stresses of life. So this slide is my little way of describing mindfulness. In a way, it's super simple. It's nothing more than the skill of paying attention to the present moment without judgment. And the without judgment bit is usually by far the hardest bit for us as humans. Why practice mindfulness? Because it gives me a different place to stand. When I build this muscle of mindfulness, I have the possibility of responding more wisely, than reacting when I'm under great stress. So for me, when I'm teaching mindfulness or running a mindfulness retreat, I constantly talk about mindfulness as nothing more than pressing the pause button. So I'm going to invite us into a 60-second of pressing the pause button. And I just want to say something here about formal practices in mindfulness. Usually focus on the breath or the body or some anchor to help us to come back again and again to the present moment. Really important for you. If I'm giving instruction that talks about focusing on the breath and that doesn't feel comfortable for you, that's absolutely no bother in the world. It doesn't matter what we focus on. So if the breath is not for you, when I'm instructing around pay attention to the breath, you say, no, Dee, I'm going to notice the feet on the floor, or I'm going to look out the window and see the rain on the window pane, or I'm going to focus on the sounds in the room. So you choose an anchor that's comfortable for you. But I'm going to invite us into a 1-minute breathing practice. So again, noticing the feet on the floor, and just assuming that we're looking for a kind of an alert. So I don't want to be all stiff in the chair, but it's kind of an intentional alert pose that says, I'm paying attention, I'm awake. So we often talk about a strong back, like a tree trunk or something coming out of the sitting bone. So we want the back to be strong and the chest to be kind of soft and open. And maybe allowing the hands to drop someplace on the knees or the lap. And then the invitation is to simply notice the breath. So in this practice, we're not going to change the breathing in any way. Each one of us just tuning into the breath. By which we mean just noticing the breath coming into and out of the body. Maybe seeing where we most notice the breath. Maybe that's just under the nostril, in the nostrils, on the upper lip. Maybe it's in the throat or the chest or lower down in the belly. Just locating where we most notice the breath. Breath coming in and the breath going out. Okay, so that's 1 minute of mindful breathing. We know mindfulness is not magic, but it is kind of amazing what we're learning from neuroscience and neuroplasticity, the people who measure activity in the brain and do brain imaging. They can show us evidence that even very short moments of mindfulness like that can really be very helpful. I want to invite a second little video. This is actually from the Dan Harris Happify app again. And it's really talking about why mindfulness. Why bother doing that brain training?
You may have heard this word mindfulness. It's become something of a buzz phrase of late. I'm going to give you one simple, serviceable definition, which is this. Mindfulness is the ability to know what's happening in your head at any given moment without getting carried away by it. Imagine how useful this could be. Just as an example, you're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off in traffic. How do you normally react? I think most of us, we normally react by having a thought, which is, I'm pissed. And then what happens next? You immediately, habitually, reflexively inhabit that thought. You actually become pissed. There's no buffer between the stimulus and your reaction. With just a little bit of mindfulness, in that same situation, you might notice my chest is buzzing, my ears are turning red, I'm having a starburst of self-righteous thoughts, I'm getting angry. But you don't necessarily have to act on it and chase that person down the road, screaming at them with your kids in the back of the car thinking you've gone nuts. Now, you might be thinking, don't I need to get angry sometimes? Aren't I justified? I would say yes, but probably not as much as you think. The proposition here is not that you should be rendered by mindfulness into some lifeless, non-judgmental blob. The proposition is that you should learn how to respond wisely to things that happen to you rather than just reacting blindly. And that, my friends, is a superpower. How do you get it? The way to get it is through meditation. I believe that meditation and mindfulness are the next big public health revolution. In the 1940s, if you told somebody you were going running, they would have said, who's chasing you? But then what happened next? The scientists swooped in, they showed that physical exercise is really good for you, and now all of us do it, and if we don't, we feel guilty about it. And that's where I think we're headed with mindfulness and meditation. It's going to join the pantheon of no-brainers like brushing your teeth, eating well, and taking the meds your doctor prescribed for you. Let me just close by saying, mindfulness is not going to solve all of your problems. It's not going to render your life a nonstop parade of unicorns and rainbows. Nonetheless, this is a superpower, and one that is accessible by you immediately.
So something about mindfulness is definitely not magic. And mindfulness definitely will not change the circumstances of your life or any of our lives. Training in mindfulness, the gold standard training being the MBSR, Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction Program, brought to the West by John Kabat-Zinn and now taught in many healthcare, education, business kind of settings. It doesn't change the circumstances of your life. If I'm living with a chronic pain in my leg, or a broken heart, or a life-limiting situation, or great distress in my family, I will still be living with that condition. But with the brain training of mindfulness, I give myself a little space so that I can maybe soften into and begin to acknowledge and accept things that I cannot change. And equally, begin to focus on areas where I do have choice and where I can, to use that awful term, but I think it describes things quite well, self-regulate. So I'm less likely to have my buttons pressed. I'm less likely to spend all my time whirring in my busy, upset, or anxious mind. And I'm more often choosing how to be in any given moment. So that's the kind of area of mindfulness. I hope it's okay to invite another practice. And again, you just sit back and let it float away and through you if it's not right for you to practice right now. But this practice I wanted to bring in this morning it's a really short, but one of the key practices in mindfulness training. It's called the 3-step breathing pause. And I think we'll do it first, and then I'll say a little word about it. So I'm going to invite you to do what we're well versed in now, which is assuming some way of sitting that signifies I'm alert and I'm awake. And usually that involves feet on the floor if I'm sitting. It involves a straight but not stiff back, so I know I'm inclined to slouch. And so when I'm deliberately, intentionally doing a practice, it's about kind of sitting up a little bit, but not stiff. You might want to move your shoulders a little, just loosening the shoulders and letting the shoulders drop. And letting the hands rest wherever they are then. And again, choosing now how to give the eyes a rest. You may want to lower the gaze. You may want to close the eyes, or you may prefer to stay focused on the image of me. So whatever suits. And then the first step of a 3-step breathing pause is simply noticing what's here now. So maybe beginning with thoughts. What thoughts are around just right now? Maybe seeing if we can notice the thoughts, even name them without getting involved. Just what's the thinking here now? And everything we do, seeing if we can do it with a kindness, not judging, not harsh, just noticing what thoughts are here. Noticing what emotions are here right now, or what is the feeling tone here right now. And again, seeing if we can notice and name without moving off into a story about the feelings. Just what's the feeling here right now? And then noticing the body, scanning the body, by which we simply mean beginning at the crown of the head and just very gently moving all the way down through the body, all the way to the soles of the feet. And just noticing now what's here in the body right in this moment. Maybe some tightness, tension, pain, maybe some sense of well-being or being relaxed, maybe some part of the body calling for particular attention. So just noticing what's in the body right now. So that is step 1 of the 3-step breathing pause. What's here right now? The thoughts, the emotions, and in the body. And step 2 of this practice is then narrowing the focus of attention so that we're just noticing the breath. So just as best we can, bringing all of the awareness now to the breath. And like we've done before, nothing special, no need to change anything. Just noticing the breath now. The breath coming in and the breath going out. And just tuning in to that rhythm of the breath right now. The breath coming in and the breath going out. So that's the second step, just noticing the breath. And the third step then is still being aware of the breath, but now widening the focus of attention so that you're aware of this whole breathing body. So noticing the whole body breathing. The breath coming in and the breath going out. And maybe becoming aware of the areas around the body now where there's feelings of warmth, air, contact with floor from the feet. Just noticing what's touching the body. Maybe a feeling of air on the hair or the scalp. And so that's the third step of the 3-step breathing pause. Just noticing the breathing body and what's around the breathing body right now. And so that short practice can be done in a minute or 2 minutes or 5 minutes, whatever you give to it. And it's used in two ways in mindfulness training. One, it kind of helps us to train the brain to be here now. It helps us to build that muscle of mindfulness. If you chose to do that a few times a day, it just helps to build that ability to be able to come off the busy or worrying mind, or to see myself as more than my aching leg right now, or whatever it is that's dominating me at the moment. And the second way that it's really useful, I use it like this a lot, is when I'm in a moment of stress. I can literally press the pause button, take those 3 steps, and I know from my experience that it calms me down. But I also know from the neuroscientists that it calms the nervous system down very fast, very effectively. So if I was going to sell you one mindfulness practice as an idea to play with, I would say look up the 3-step breathing pause. Okay, and in a way that's, mindfulness is really simple. It's just not easy because we're human. So in a way, that's the whole point of mindfulness, is that it helps us to recognize that sometimes we get really stuck in a stress cycle. Now, stress gets a bad rap. Stress is actually really important. Having some stress response, that is what gets us out of bed. It helps us, with that adrenaline rush, it helps us to cope in times of crisis or danger. So stress is not a bad thing. But unfortunately, a lot of the time, and especially in our fast-moving, ultra-connected 21st century living, a lot of the time we get stuck on a stress cycle where there isn't any need for extra adrenaline, where there isn't something to be done. And that's when we get into real difficulty with anxiety and chronic stress that really has huge impact on the body. And so mindfulness helps us to notice when I'm highly stressed. I become aware of it. And then if I do something like the brain training, like mindfulness, that helps me to step back from that high stress moment and to move into operating from a newer part of the brain, what we call the parasympathetic nervous system. And that just floods the whole body with the calming hormones so that I return to a calm baseline, or as I like to say, I self-regulate. So I notice I'm really stressed. I do something and things calm down. So mindfulness is nothing more than just one way that we can notice when we're stuck on that flight or fight or freeze mode, especially when it's not helping us and we're stuck there. And it can help us to really strengthen and go faster and go intentionally into that newer part of the brain that really helps us to calm down. So in a way, it's super simple. The only question that it brings up is the question of habit. So I'm going to stay moving, but I'm hoping that people are putting your comments in the chat box or your questions in the question and answer box. What's helpful, what's not? What questions arise? If we were in a room together, physically, and if we were spending more time together, I would spend a huge part of our time on supporting you to discover what's useful to take away and what does not fit for you. And that's a perfect response to an introduction to mindfulness. So hopefully at the end, we'll have some time for exchange. So I've talked a bit about, or at least I've mentioned Jon Kabat-Zinn, the father of the current wave of mindfulness. absolutely started from a medical base. He was working with people. Chronic depression actually was his specialty at the time. And he was able to help people to relax more and not be dominated by their experience. But there was a question of relapse. People were fine for a while and then fell back into the old habit. And so, long story short, he and others went and investigated around the roots of Buddhism and brought back what we now know as the MBSR, MBCT, the core mindfulness trainings, which are evidence-based brain training that help people to live with chronic pain, physical or emotional, or help people in business and education settings to be more focused, to have more clarity, and to live more from a place of peace and calm. So that's what it is. But my particular area of interest, and in fact, the cutting edge of mindfulness now, is this area of mindfulness and compassion. That short breathing practice we did at the beginning, that came from Christopher Gurman and Christian Neff. And they've spent many years now building up the data and the evidence for the power of compassion. The Center for Mindful Self-Compassion, if you wanted to look up more practices in this area, that's where you'd find them. So compassion is defined as deep sympathy for another, but it's also action orientated. So I really feel for the other, and then I take action to support them. And with self-compassion, we give ourselves the same kindness as we would naturally give to a good friend. Christian Neff and others working in the area of self-compassion talk about 3 strands that are really important. Kindness, kind of non-judging ourselves. I think most of us are aware of the inner gremlin, that little voice in our heads, the inner critic. So self-compassion involves bringing a kindness, turning with softness towards whatever our experience is. It also involves mindfulness, which is that business of being here now, noticing what's going on, noticing that I'm wired up in my head, noticing that I'm so frustrated in feeling the lack of something or the loss of something, noticing that I'm so angry because in this moment, even though I want to do something, I'm not able to do it. Whatever it is, it's noticing what's happening. And John Kabat-Zinn says, most of us live our lives, from the head up. We don't want to know anything about what's happening in the body. And a lot of us who have experience of stress, we talk about the ways we manage stress, and it usually involves, I know, stuffing it down with food, eating all that chocolate that I've stored up for the 5 weeks of lockdown, and maybe a bottle of wine or 2, maybe overworking, maybe mindless TV. I find some way of not noticing what's happening because I don't want to. So the strange thing about mindfulness or self-compassion and the component of mindfulness is that it asks us to notice what's happening. So I'm feeling rotten right now in this moment. Our normal impulse is to hide that rottenness by doing something else. Mindfulness says, notice what's happening. And then the third strand of mindfulness, self-compassion, is noticing that it's not just me. We know that mindfulness comes from, Buddhist roots, really. And in the Buddhist roots, one of the things that's really important is knowing that suffering and pain and change and challenge are part of being alive. And so I might be living with an extreme experience of pain or stress or challenge. But part of self-compassion is knowing, and that's part of being human. And so there are others who share this with me. And like sitting and noticing what's really happening for me, sitting and noticing that I'm not alone is also very powerful. So if I had not been given an hour and a half and I'd been given 2 minutes to be here this morning, my contribution would be this: self-compassion is the superpower of mindfulness. So challenging, I think, and I'd love to hear what you think, but it is my deep belief self-compassion is the superpower of mindfulness. And self-compassion and being a compassionate presence in the world involves this notion of kindness. We'll come back to kindness towards ourselves. But just taking a moment to look at the research that's emerging in the last 7, 5, 3 years, showing that repeated acts of kindness actually works to decrease stress in our body. The neuroscientists can tell us how happiness, if I have the habit of kindness, it makes me happier. It impacts on some physiological systems, like it improves my immune system. It makes me feel somehow more alive and more creative. It involves the release of that hormone oxytocin so that I feel more warmth and more well-being simply by small acts of kindness. Sounds strange, doesn't it? So we talk in mindfulness all the time. I'm probably driving you nuts just now talking about practicing. Mindfulness as an idea doesn't work. Mindfulness as reading a lovely book doesn't work. Mindfulness only works through practice. And so one way then of practicing mindfulness is to intentionally do something about being a kind presence in the world. Now, again, if we were in the room together, I would ask you, what ideas might you have about how to practice kindness? And I bet your ideas would be much better than what I have on the slide here. Just some ideas. So practicing kindness doesn't have to be some big, huge, altruistic thing. It can be tiny. Opening the door for somebody, tiny. Smiling is a big kindness practice. Overcoming what is often our innate shyness to get involved by offering somebody help when we think they need it. Maybe taking some effort ourselves to do something for another person without expecting something in return. Act of kindness, so important in our current experience of living over the last few months. It's picking up the phone and reaching out to another. And an act of kindness is listening. Really listening to someone. I know I would say I like to listen. I'm good at listening. But I also know that lots of the time when I'm listening, well, I'm kind of listening, but I'm also busy in my head. So listening as an act of kindness would be, actually, for this moment, I'm going to, like if I was doing another mindfulness practice, notice the busyness in my mind, notice that I really want to rehearse what I want to say back to you, and then say, no, but you know what? I'm just going to listen to Dee for the next minute. Act of kindness. So like any mindfulness practice, the suggestion is that small acts of kindness build up that capacity in me to notice when I'm highly stressed and to move to a calmer place and to release those really helpful hormones that help manage stress physiologically as well as emotionally. So we're back to self-kindness now. We all know, I'm sure, everybody in this room, that we cannot pour from an empty cup. Strangely, we probably all also know that it is much easier for us to be compassionate and kind to another person than it is to do that for ourselves. Just seems to be, I don't know, part of the human condition, part of our cultural heritage. The idea of being kind to ourselves is often not that attractive. But I am minded of, in those now far gone days where we might be getting on a plane and going off someplace, you know, the safety talk before the plane takes off. If we're in deep trouble on this airplane and the oxygen masks come down, what does the guidance say? I know my impulse would be absolutely to put the mask on the little children with me, or my older parent with me, to look after those around me, and then put the mask on myself. But you'll find that the air steward says, please put the mask on yourself first before attending to those around you. And that's kind of my guidance around understanding we cannot pour from an empty cup. So in that way, investing in my own well-being is really the only possibility for me being a compassionate presence to those around me. So what does it mean to be kind to myself? So there's a wonderful mindfulness teacher called Sharon Salzberg. She too was around at the very beginning of bringing the second wave of mindfulness to the West. And she has focused her life's teaching on the area of kindness, and particularly kindness to self. And she has wonderful, you can look her up on YouTube, and she's written many wonderful, very easy to read books, but she has wonderful thoughts on, so self-care is not soft, namby-pamby mushiness. For Sharon, and for me, and for many people involved in mindfulness, self-care is a hardcore resilience tool. So self-care is not selfishness. Self-care is about centering myself, doing what is necessary so that I can cope, I can live with some ease, and therefore I can be a compassionate, kind presence in the world. So self-care, like any other mindfulness practice, is kind of a discipline, and it involves taking some steps. So self-care might be, I know in my case it does include a long bath. It might be a lovely walk, or it might be watching a great movie. So that level of self-care makes sense and has a place. Self-care definitely involves noticing what is happening in you. So that business of the mindful awareness, being here now, what's actually going on. Acknowledging your suffering and your failures, and showing kindness and compassion towards yourself. And that's hard. That's hardcore practice. Self-care also involves sometimes making challenging decisions, setting boundaries, saying no, refilling your own cup. And for every one of us listening to this morning, that might mean different things. But at core, it means that it is not selfish to know how I am and to know what I need and to set some boundaries. In fact, it is a very kind, compassionate thing to do, not only for myself, but for everybody else around me. So learning the skill of boundaries, which often includes saying no. Another element of self-care, probably pertinent to at least some of us in the room this morning, is surrendering to what I cannot control. So very often, when we're stuck on that high stress response, we're fighting, we're fueling, we're engaged, we're agitated. A huge area of practice in mindfulness is not only learning to be aware, but then moving into accept that which I cannot change. Surrendering, if you like. And that's hardcore practice. But the funny, not in a ha-ha sense, but the funny, peculiar thing is when I begin to surrender, it opens up that space I talked about in the beginning. Pressing the pause button opens up a bit of space. And then I begin to see the areas where I do have choice, where I can be self-actualizing, where I can take action. But it's really only when I stop fighting or stuffing down or ignoring what is happening that those possibilities open up. So you can see from Sharon Salzberg's work and from my own experience in supporting people with various life situations in developing that muscle of mindfulness, that self-care is not soft, mushy. It's hardcore practice, and it is something that takes intentionality and takes some level of courage to invest in. So, never a good mindfulness input without some home practice. So I just wanted to raise a couple of questions. So in your real life right now, would you be able to think of what might be a healthy boundary that you could commit to that would support your well-being just right now? Maybe something tiny. Just taking a moment and seeing, does something come to mind for you that would be a healthy boundary? Investing in your self-care, in your self-compassion, so that you might live with more ease and peace, whatever the external circumstances. And then I'm going to push you and say, well, could you name 1 or 2 or 3 new boundaries in your day-to-day life that you might then commit to, let's say for 4 weeks? Mindfulness is nothing, only a habit. And we know as humans, it takes us a little while to carve out a habit. And once we've carved out the habit, it nearly becomes unconscious. So the question or challenge is, might you find a boundary or 2 or 3 that you could play with over the next month and see if that supports your well-being in any way? And a second question or challenge. So if mindfulness is just that brain training activity of pressing a pause button during the day, is there any way that you might really do that in your real life? Again, focusing on maybe 1 or 2 things that you might do, we'll call it a practice, and that you might commit to that as well for a month. Now, I know it's a little bit challenging in this context because normally the invitation would be for people to maybe learn some of the mindfulness practices. And then when you're bringing mindfulness into your own daily life, you might do some formal practice and you might do something informal. Informal could be, when the kettle is boiling, I'm not going to be dashing around doing something else as well. I'm just going to watch the kettle boiling. Or when I make a cup of tea, I'm just going to have a cup of tea. Or I'm going to spend 5 minutes looking out the window or being outside in the fresh air and noticing what I see out the window or feeling the fresh air on my skin. So building the practice into the daily life is usually in tune with some formal practice that's helping us to do the brain training. But you could look up any of the practices we've done this morning. 1 minute of breathing, 3-step breathing pause, compassionate breathing. And I'm going to finish with another practice now. You just Google them and you'll find many practitioners of mindfulness with YouTubes and whatever. And I would really recommend the Center for Mindfulness Self-Compassion as a place where there's also very easily downloadable practices. So maybe just taking this moment now to see, well, in your real life, whatever your set of circumstances or your interest or disinterest in mindfulness at the moment, might there be something that you would say, well, I might play with that over the next 4 weeks. And we know to build a muscle, it means, doing something. Not for a very long time. It could be for 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 5 minutes, but doing it regularly. So, takeaways, if you would like them. So I'd like to finish with another compassion practice. And this practice is called the metta or kindness practice. And I think it might be the only practice that has its roots right back in the Buddhist origins of the second wave of mindfulness. So in a way, this practice has been done for more than 2,500 years. And we're just going to do a little taste of that practice. So I'm going to invite you again to take a moment to settle into the chair, finding the 2 feet on the floor and moving about. I'm just saying that, if you're doing a practice, listening to somebody or watching a YouTube, we don't have to sit still for the whole practice. You feel like you want to move an itch or whatever, you do it. Sitting is difficult for you. You do a practice lying down. You do a practice standing up. So really always, always, always just listening to your own inner wisdom. But I'm giving the instruction as though we're sitting. So feet on the floor. Finding that alert spot way of sitting in the chair. Maybe rolling the shoulders. Maybe allowing the shoulders to drop even a little. And the hands now resting on the lap. And choosing now what to do with the eyes for this practice. And now noticing the very small of the back. Just that part in the back where the spine emerges from the sitting bone. Just seeing if it might be possible to bring up the whole of your awareness to just that part of the body right now. It's a part of the body where we often carry some tightness or some tension. So just noticing the very small of the back. Noticing the spine emerging from the small of the back. And seeing if it might be possible to soften this area of the back. Maybe even imagining the breath moving around the very bottom of the back. Loosening, softening, easing out. Moving up to the middle of the back. Seeing if the breath might soften and loosen what's here right now. And then the top of the back. Again, seeing if we might soften and loosen what's here right now. The shoulders. Another part of the body where we sometimes carry that which we don't want. So just noticing what's in the shoulders right here, right now. Bringing as best we can a kind, gentle awareness to the shoulders right now. And again, imagining the breath just moving very gently in the area of the shoulders, loosening and softening, easing out any tightness that might be here right now. So that the shoulders might drop even a little. Noticing the weight and the volume of the arms as they come out from the shoulders, all the way down to the elbows. Maybe becoming aware of the elbows themselves, that soft hollow on the inside of the elbows, and the bony structure on the back of the elbows. Noticing now the lower part of the arms down to the wrists. Becoming aware of the hands wherever they're resting. Maybe noticing the back of the hands, the palm of the hands. Maybe sensing into any tingling in the hands right now. Any feelings of warmth or moisture, or contact with air, or contact with cloth. Maybe noticing the fingers and the thumbs on each hand. And even the spaces in between the fingers and thumbs. Now letting the hands dissolve in awareness. And in this kindness practice, I'm going to invite you to become aware of a benefactor, by which we mean somebody who has been very kind to you in your life. It might be somebody in your life right now, a beloved, or it might be somebody from a particular time in your life who was really kind, really helpful, really there for you. It might even be a pet. A creature who has given you unconditional love. So just taking a moment to focus on who might be your benefactor for this practice. And then we're going to wish that person or that pet well. So in this practice, we use 4 particular phrases. And it's important as you hear these phrases that you change them up any way that suits you. There might be something more fitting for your benefactor. So feeling free. But wishing your benefactor well now. We just say it quietly. May you be safe. May you be as healthy as possible. May you be happy. May you be at ease. And just noticing any feelings within yourself as you wish your benefactor well in this way. Again, taking the opportunity to be kind, non-judgmental, just noticing what's here. May you be safe. May you be healthy as possible. May you be happy. May you be at ease. And now bringing yourself into the circle with your benefactor, so that you're wishing both of you well in this moment. Maybe picturing yourself and the benefactor together. And wishing yourselves well. May we be safe. May we be healthy as possible. May we be happy. May we be at ease. And bringing in here any words or phrases that make more sense for you at this time. May we be safe. May we be healthy as possible. May we be happy. May we be at ease. And again, noticing any feelings in yourself right now. And being particularly kind if you don't notice any feelings of goodwill. This practice is really about the intention. So it doesn't matter if it feels really false or forced. We know that over time, doing this practice will soften your approach to yourself and will cultivate feelings of kindness and compassion. But not always. Sometimes it feels arid and dry as we're doing it. And now the final step in this practice is letting the image of the benefactor float away and just focusing right now on an image of yourself. And it might be yourself as you're sitting here and right now. Or it might be an image of yourself from another time. Just settling into a way of wishing yourself well in this moment. Focusing in on an image of yourself and wishing yourself well. May I be safe. May I be as healthy as possible. May I be happy. May I live with ease. And again, introducing here now any phrases that are particularly useful or helpful for you right in this moment. And just so leaving a little space here for you to do that, wishing yourself well. May I be safe. May I be as healthy as possible. May I be happy. May I be at ease. Again, noticing what feeling tone is here right now as I say those words. And knowing that it's okay to feel nothing or to feel agitated. Knowing that the practice helps over time to cultivate a sense of positivity and compassion towards ourselves and others. So just coming back now to noticing the feet on the floor, the body on the chair, the sense of air making contact with some part of the body, and the sounds around you in your own space, and maybe sounds coming in from my space. And then when you're ready, to just open the eyes or lift the gaze. So, welcome back into our strange room together. And I know, Aoife, I think you're going to help with some chat in the questions, but I've seen some questions here that I'd love to respond to, and maybe to invite people, if there's anything else you'd like to put in right now into a chat box, please do, or the question and answer.
Thanks so much, Dee. That was fantastic, and it was so relaxing. And I think that having those tools and being able to, treat ourselves with compassion and being able to, be kind and gentle with ourselves, that's so important. I think everybody will really benefit from it. So thank you so much for such a lovely, relaxing session. A lovely thing to have on a Saturday, and especially during the pandemic. It was a welcome break from.
Okay, thank you, Aoife.
Usual
So I do want to say that, it's really important for people to notice how you are as you do the practice, because for some of us, sometimes it feels very relaxing like that and I let go. And other times, I know from my own practice, doing the same practice every day, I do a body scan. And sometimes like that, I feel, really chilled. It really helps me to come out of the head. And then other times I feel really tense and tight. And so, especially when I'm learning mindfulness in the beginning, sometimes it can be really unrelaxing. Like I work a lot one-to-one with people, and sometimes they'll say to me, Dee, I thought I was bad before I came here, but now I didn't even know I had this big pain in my shoulders. Now I have this big pain in my shoulders. So noticing sometimes brings things to the fore initially. Yeah. So just again, at the very beginning, I urged a little caution, so being really careful to do only what feels okay. Yeah, but I'm glad that some people will find some of it relaxing and at least worthy of looking at to see if it helpful.
And I suppose when you're more self-aware of what's going on, and you're giving yourself more attention, those things can happen, I guess. But
they absolutely do. Yeah.
And
for most of us, some of the time. Yeah.
And as you say, it's practice too. So not everybody will slot into it straight away, and it can take a little bit of time for somebody to become comfortable with it, and get into a rhythm of it.
And for some people learning mindfulness, the formal training focuses on anchors like the breath and the body, and some people just find that, especially maybe if I'm living with chronic pain right now, just too much. I don't want to notice the pain in my leg. And in that case, there would be other practices where we would move away from that and focus on the sound or look at a picture on the wall. It doesn't matter. So I would really encourage people never to feel in distress or that the practice is making me feel worse or it's not helping me right now. Then find another anchor. Look out the window.
And we can see from some of the comments that have come in through the Q&A box, there's been somebody there who said that they've tried meditation in the past and found that it made them more aware of aches and pains and stiffness in the body. And they sometimes felt physically worse after they'd finished it. So that just ties in.
Exhibit A, thank you so much for sharing that wisdom with us. Probably for a lot of us living with, a huge challenge in life or a physical ache and pain or a broken heart, when I sit down and notice how am I, wow, that stuff is going to flood in. So it usually is with some support and some care and some building that muscle that I then learn to say, okay, so I can't control that, but here's the space where I do have choice. And here's why helping myself and supporting myself helps. But that's a bit of a journey. So I would really urge, so thanks a million for sharing that. I would urge those who have that feeling when I, try and listen to a 3-minute meditation and it just makes my head fried or makes me more aware of the pain in my leg, then don't go that way. Start more gently. Start with a non-breath or a non-body practice. And so sound, or looking at something else, or noticing your feet on the floor, or a chocolate meditation. Try that.
We have another comment in from somebody saying that they first experienced mindfulness when dealing with severe anxiety at 13, and when diagnosed with MS at 23, it reaffirmed for them the importance of mindfulness to help them deal with daily tasks. And they're struggling at the moment with stress when they're driving, because they're learning to drive, and wondering if you have any tips with that.
Yeah. So great. So if I don't know the name of the person, it's not, is it in the box? Who would it be? Who am I speaking to?
In the chat box, it's Laura.
Laura. Okay, Laura. So thanks for asking that question. Yeah, absolutely. You know, this mightn't be the practice for you, but the 3-step breathing pause is something that I do in a situation like that. And I do it because as a young woman, before I even discovered mindfulness, to be honest, I was chronically shy. So going into an interview or anything, I would be highly stressed. I'd be sweating. I'd be speaking in a squeaky voice and I'd hardly know my own name and it would be a disaster. And I somehow learned that taking a moment of breathing calmed me down. So at least I didn't talk in a squeaky voice and I wasn't sweating so much. And we now know that doing something like a 3-step breathing pause, which I can do in 3 minutes, 2 minutes, will flood me with the same kind of hormone. So it'll bring me into a more calmer state. So committing to that before the practice, before the driving practice, or some practice that you find helpful in that way. And doing it before you go out driving. And then after the driving, doing a compassionate practice that helps you to get in touch with how you're feeling. So it's really flooding your body with kindness after the practice. Love to know how you get on. Thanks for asking.
And we have a very nice comment in Dee about how much people have enjoyed that. And somebody has said that they would love to hear your voice the next time that they're in their MRI, as they feel that they that they're going to have a panic attack during their MRI scan. So I suppose for the MS community, MRI scans are, something that they regularly will have to engage with. Do you have any tips for that for people who?
Yeah, well, I think that, who is that now?
There isn't actually a name on it.
Okay, so thanks for sharing that. And so you're giving yourselves a great tip there. So in mindfulness, it's all about building the muscle. So I'm not going to think of something I'm unfamiliar with when I'm in a moment of stress, like in the MRI scan. But if I've been listening to something, if I've been practicing a practice, I will bring it to mind fairly quickly when I'm in that situation. So I would say becoming familiar with something that is soothing, and thank you for saying that my voice is helpful this morning, and there are many others. So that's a great tip, actually. Finding a voice, for some of us it's a man, it's a woman, it's a lovely American accent, it's an Irish accent, really finding something that you like, and then that is your go-to practice. And then when you're in that MRI and you're feeling the tension, you can allow in your imagination yourself to go right there and do the practice. We can't do it cold. We need to build the muscle of mindfulness. And that's why I was making the suggestion about playing with something for a month. So maybe that's a great thing for you guys to play with for a month. If you found yourself in an MRI, what would be helpful? What practice would make sense? And then do that, kind of practicing for the real event of being in the MRI.
That's wonderful. Well, again, we've had great feedback on this session, Dee, and thanks so much for joining us.
You're most welcome. I loved it. Yeah, you might or might not have picked up on my panic when I disappeared. My internet went down at home, so I had to scurry in a car to someplace else. Oh. So I'm so glad those people were out of bed and I could get into their house and on the internet. Oh. And it was great being here.
Thank you for overseeing those challenges as well, overcoming those challenges and being so adaptable. So thanks so much, Dee. I'm going to invite Sharon Kinsella. Sharon is the one who actually organised both this event and the one last week, and he would just like to come on and address our attendees. Sharon is a regional community worker with MS Ireland. So Sharon, I might just invite you on now.
Well, address sounds very formal, Aoife. Thank you. Well, I want to thank Dee for that wonderful session. It's only one of the strings to Dee's bow of what you had here this morning. I know her in another context in facilitating, and it was actually a team effort. My colleague Geraldine suggested Dee for this session, and it really worked, I think. And thank you, Geraldine. Thank you, Dee. So we all do our bit. The reason I wanted to speak was that we have done this sort of event that you've had over the last 2 days, today and last Saturday, as a one-day event in person up until now. But of course, COVID changed all that. And the advantage is that people from all over the country can be there. They don't have to travel to a hotel at Dublin Airport or wherever. The disadvantage is that you're not getting together in a group and chatting, or there isn't that chat over coffee or whatever. So we are thinking in the North Dublin area, if you're interested, we would organise a Zoom session for the people in North Dublin if they're interested. So if you would like to do that, we might pick an evening or a Saturday morning. So if you would please get in touch with us. The easiest way is probably to ring our office, 014905933, or to email us. You see there NAMS Society in front of me. So the email is na@ms-society.ie. So just let us know if you would be interested in that, coming together for a bit of discussion about what you've learned, what we've all heard over the last 2 days. So thank you. And thanks again, Dee, and thanks, Aoife, for a wonderful job in facilitating all this for us.
Thank you, Sean, and just for everybody else as well. So, you know, across the country, you might be joining from a different location, and just to say that the information for the regional community worker in your area will be available on our website, www.ms-society.ie, and you can get in touch with them to make a connection with them if you haven't already. Okay, so thank you, everybody. We're just delighted that so many people were able to join, and we really hope that you've benefited over the past 2 sessions. And thank you. We look forward to being engaged with you in the future. Thank you. Bye.